I'm very sorry, but we cannot afford to pay what we owe right now. My husband has gone missing, and I'm still trying to find him.
No, you misunderstand us. We are here to help with the investigation. We'd like to ask you some questions about Mr. Nagato's disappearance, if we may.
Ah, I see. I thought the debt collectors had come to visit again. I'm sorry you have to see me in this dreadful state. Has some new information come out? Do you know where he's gone?
I'm afraid we don't have any new information at the moment. We're still trying to find out as much as we can to inform our search. With this in mind, can we perhaps ask some questions about your family's current situation?
For example, Paimon's struggling to understand why a collector would be strapped for Mora.
That's a long story. Ever since I've known him, he's been an avid collector of all sorts of things. He'd always get so animated when he was showing them to me. I knew nothing about the items myself, but seeing how enthusiastic and excited they made him, I was happy to believe that they were just extremely important to him. Everything was fine when we first got married, but as time went by, things changed for the worse.
Uh-oh, what happened?
He lost his sense of restraint. He started buying more and more things, and even resorted to borrowing money just so he could pay for them. Our expenses really spiraled out of control when he started getting interested in weapons. It was awful. There were days when he'd spend hours down at the warehouse, admiring his weapons even as debt collectors were descending upon our house. He wouldn't sell them, wouldn't even touch them. Just sat there staring at them like he was in a trance. I'm happy he has a hobby, and I'm willing to support him, but making ends meet has to come first. I've tried talking to him about it so many times, but he never listens. On the last day that I saw him, I gave him an ultimatum. I said, if he refused to sell his collectibles and pay off his debts, I would divorce him and take the children with me.
Whoa!
And that led to an argument.
Actually, it didn't. Generally, he's a quiet man who likes to go with the flow. On most things, he leaves the decision-making to me. You must understand, I never would have dreamed of threatening him with divorce if the debts hadn't pushed our family to the brink. After I said those words, he froze and was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, he awkwardly mumbled that he would pick out a few items to sell. His voice was so meek and pitiful that I felt an urge to take everything back. But then what? If I didn't draw the line, what would happen to our family? Had I not indulged his bad habits, we wouldn't have found ourselves in such a predicament. And I also don't know if he had actually come to his senses, or if he was simply angry with me. The next thing I heard was that our warehouse had caught fire, and both he and the buyer had gone missing.
I see. I understand. Amin Omeyuya came to purchase a weapon from Mr. Nagato. During the sale, a fire broke out at the warehouse, and both men disappeared.
At first, I assumed they must have gotten into an argument over the price. But my husband has never been one to negotiate. He never even haggles when he's out buying groceries, so it's hard to imagine him getting into a fierce argument.
Maybe he was feeling the pressure from the debts?
I don't know. He just disappeared after the warehouse burned down. Perhaps he's too afraid to come home now that all his collectibles have been lost in the fire, and he's got no way to pay off our debts. Even though I'm still a little mad at him, we're a family, and I want us to face our family's crisis together. As long as he's willing to turn over a new leaf, I know we can work things out.
Please don't get upset. There could be more to this situation than meets the eye. If collecting things is a habit that Mr. Nagato had his whole life, it is quite unusual for this habit to change so drastically over a short period. But the information we gathered from the other side suggests Amenoma Yuya is also a mild-mannered man who would not be likely to start an argument. This situation is getting a little confusing.
A little confusing? More like completely mystifying.
Let's try a change of scenery and see if we can piece together what we've learned. Rest assured, we'll notify you if we find anything.
Thank you so much. I just want him to come home.
Based on the information we've gathered so far, I can only surmise that the sales meeting between the two men was somehow the catalyst for their disappearance. The fire at the warehouse likely played a part in how the situation unfolded, though its exact role is a mystery. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, Paimon was thinking that maybe someone accidentally knocked over an oil lamp and, nope, never mind. Paimon's brain needs to rest for a while. Over to you.
An interesting explanation. I was also considering this possibility. Amenoma Yuya is an expert on swords. He could have noticed some problematic details about Mr. Nagato's collectibles. Maybe he recognized a blade as a fake, or a well-known stolen item. Either way, after arguing about it, the two men agreed to hide the truth of this matter. They thought a fire would destroy everything. But then the Tenryou Commission began investigating and uncovered some incriminating details, so they fled to protect their secrets. But it's a far-fetched theory. I can't imagine how they would have been able to reach an agreement. One fact that I keep coming back to is that Amenoma Yuya is polite and well-mannered, while Mr. Nagato is introverted and passive. Neither seems like the type of person who is inclined towards initiating conflict. Mr. Nagato, being heavily in debt, is also the only one of them with the potential motive to disappear after the fire. The more I ponder it, the more puzzling it becomes. Just what could have happened there? Right. Although the time frame seems to broadly match, no other details that we've learned seem to link the two events together. Amenoma Yuya lacks a key distinguishing feature of the attacker, namely that he is principally a practitioner of the blade testing techniques of Amenoma art, not those of the combat-oriented Ishin art.
Darn! We thought we could get two birds with one stone here, but at this rate, it's starting to look like a wild goose chase.
Let's keep going, since we've come this far. If we can solve the case, both Mr. Amenoma and Mrs. Nagato will be able to get some closure.
Okay, but where should we go now?
Let's head out of the city and check out the warehouse. There's still a chance we may be able to find some shreds of evidence. Wait. I hear something ominous in the wind.
Oh! This must be another one of those sounds that only you can hear. As sketchy as that whole thing seems, you did put it to good use when we were chasing down that vision thief at Beto's tournament, so...
Now I'm picking up a strong scent in addition to the sound. It's right around here somewhere.
But there's nothing here.
It's gone now, but I can still sense the direction it left in. It felt very much like that ancient presence in Inazuma, the remnants of the Tatarigami. Indeed, but this unexpected spring of inauspicious energy may prove to be of benefit to our investigation. We should remain vigilant and approach slowly.
So it's an underground warehouse.
The force is definitely coming from down below. The source of the Tatarigami energy has long since left this place, but the residue it left behind still hasn't dissipated completely. Judging from the concentration, I would have to conclude that the Tatarigami source resided here for a very long time.
Mrs. Nagato said her husband used to hang around the warehouse by himself a lot.
It could well be that he was already under the influence of Tatarigami energy at that time. From what I've been told, Tatarigami does not turn all upon whom it preys into violent monsters, but most will develop a stubborn streak upon being exposed to the Tatarigami's unfulfilled will. Their interests become fanatical obsessions. Mr. Nagato had an interest in collecting to begin with. The influence of Tatarigami could explain why he became an obsessive hoarder, amassing more and more possessions, even as he put himself in grave debt.
So what should we do now? Go down and take a look?
Step back. I'll open the door and take a look inside. If we don't open this door, we can move no closer to the truth. You needn't worry. Both of us have faced far greater dangers than this. Relatively speaking, the risk here is trivial.
What's down there?
Everything's buried in debris. I can't see anything. It looks like the fire caused a cave-in, reducing the entire warehouse to rubble.
That was too scary! Paimon was so sure that the warehouse boogeyman was about to jump out at us!
All we can do now is keep searching in the direction that the Tatarigami energy's source left this place. 2 ordinary humans, entangled with the Tatarigami. I fear much misfortune has already befallen them. Yes, let's go. If nothing else, it's vital that we find out where this Tatarigami energy is coming from. Quiet your mind and focus on what you sense around you. Perhaps you too will perceive its ominous presence in the wind. From this point, the trail appears to split into 2. The main source of the Tatarigami energy continued on into the distance, but a small portion remained here, and seems to be dissipating slowly. Quite possibly. Let's search the area.
Whoa! Look at all those hilly churls! They're acting really strangely.
Something seems to be drawing their attention. Let's take a closer look.
Let's light it up! Just like we rehearsed! Why do they never miss?
It's...
Ugh! Look at this red stuff! What is it?
By the looks of it, a letter written on a piece of torn clothing. The ink is bone dry. It must have been written quite some time ago. Well, let's take a look. According to this letter, a conflict arose because Amenoma Yuya wanted to seize a blade belonging to Mr. Nagato. Yuya started the fire that destroyed the warehouse and wounded Mr. Nagato in the fight. Mr. Nagato kept chase as long as he could, eventually stopping here to write this letter when his strength gave out.
So, where is he?
He was not only mortally wounded, but also under the heavy influence of Tatarigami. Add to that the fact that its aura seems to have attracted a horde of monsters, and I'm afraid he may no longer be with us. Whatever traces there may have been of his fate beyond after this point, they've since been disturbed by the hilly churls. There's nothing more for us to find here. Yes, right now we need to uncover some more important truths. If Amenoma Yuya is attacking other people indiscriminately, then the longer we take to find him, the more people risk meeting the same tragic end.
Right, so let's get moving.
I wouldn't be surprised if he, too, fell prey to the influence of the Tatarigami. For a practitioner of the martial arts, the easiest desire to inflame would be their pursuit of further power and skill. All the clues that at first seemed disparate and disconnected, it seems that now we know the thread that runs between them. I have a hypothesis that, if it's correct, not only explains the series of events leading to the two men's disappearance, but also zeroes in on the attacker's identity.
Wait, you figured it out? So these two cases are connected after all?
I believe so. But it's something of an outlandish idea. I will only be able to confirm my suspicions once we've met him in person. On with the search. We must stay vigilant. At any point now, we may find ourselves in danger. He seems to have stayed here for a long time.
Why here? Is there anything special about this place?
I'm not sure. But on closer examination, I sense that the aura may have lingered here at several different points in time.
Show yourself! It's no use hiding anymore.
Kaede Harakazua. It's you, at last.
Aha! So it is the same guy from before! What's your problem, huh? What could you possibly have against Kazuha?
Indeed, there should be no enmity between us. If it is Amenoma Yuya that stands before us. But what if instead of facing Amenoma Yuya, we are in fact facing the blade in his hand?
Now that you mention it, it is giving off a strange light. Whoa, whoa! Surely you don't mean... Are you serious?
Tatarigami energy often lodges itself within physical objects, then works to subtly affect any living organisms in its vicinity. The blade has resided in Mr. Nagato's warehouse for many years, affecting his state of mind, and more recently using the sale as a means to affect, or rather as a means to occupy, Amenoma Yuya's body.
You're sharper than I thought. You've already deduced the truth of the matter. Many, many years ago, I was forged by a famed bladesmith of the Ishin tradition. I was his pride and joy. In me, he placed all his hopes and dreams. As a descendant of the Kaedehara clan, You should be able to guess our greatest regret.
I presume it has something to do with the Raiden Gokaden.
Indeed. At that point in time, he failed to live up to the Raiden Shogun's expectations. In the end, all he could do was to flee the nation by sea on a ship bound for Snezhnaya. He was a bladesmith of great renown, a master of his craft. There was nothing that he could not accomplish. All he needed was more time and a little faith. And sure enough, in the end, he achieved what he had set out to do. All of his life's work, his wisdom, his skill, it culminated in his creation of me. He not only bestowed upon me the greatest of strength, but also endowed me with a consciousness of my own. In her conceit, the Raiden Shogun lost not only the single most perfect blade in the entire world, but also an irreplaceable achievement in the art of blade forging.
So, swords can become conscious and control people?
The people of the time in which I was born never believed I had that kind of power. They saw me as a mere blade, a sharp and well-crafted one, but in all other respects an ordinary weapon. But that gave me the opportunity to take action. After the death of my creator, I decided to leave Snezhnaya and began my long quest to return to the distant land of Inazuma. Moving from one person to the next, I controlled the minds of countless hosts along the way, each bringing me one step closer to my ancestral home. I seek but one thing: to face the full force of the Raiden Shogun's blade and prove my power, the might of Ishin art.
So Amenoma Yuya was not your first victim. Tell me, what happens to those you've possessed when you've finished using them?
My hosts? Who cares what happens to them? They are but tools that serve my mission. When they got tired, or injured, or unusable, I hopped to the next one in line. All I needed them for was to take me back to Inazuma.
You're awful.
After I returned to Inazuma, I decided to bide my time in Nagato's warehouse until Amenoma Yuya handed himself over to me on a silver platter. At long last, I'm approaching my journey's destination. By Amenoma Yuya's body, I have found you, and by your hand, I shall defeat the Raiden Shogun! Kaede Harakazuha, you stood against the Raiden Shogun's Muso no Hitotachi. There can be no other to serve as my host for what is to come. Now, give your body over to me!